She loses consciousness during a routine medical checkup and regains awareness in embrace of the charming, wealthy doctor. As the elevator chimed softly, Emily exited onto the 12th floor of Parkside Medical Center. The environment sparkled white walls, gentle lighting, and modern furnishings that spoke of affluence and sophistication. Emily gripped her purse, her heartbeat racing for reasons beyond the climb from the subway. She had nearly canceled her appointment twice that morning, but her exhaustion persisted. The dizzy spells were happening more often, and her body quietly protested after each demanding day at work. She sensed something was wrong, and despite her aversion to hospitals and the vulnerability they brought, she finally surrendered. At the front desk, she introduced herself Emily Harper and was shown into a private exam room, part of the comprehensive wellness package she had quickly purchased online. The nurse, friendly yet efficient, handed her a gown and asked her to change. Everything was calm, orderly, and professional. Soon, Emily found herself perched on the edge of the exam table, wearing a thin paper gown, her legs swinging as she tried to steady her nerves. She hadn't told anyone about her visit. In New York, she was virtually unknown. That was how she preferred it, or so she told herself. She had relocated from Ohio just 6 months ago, leaving behind a life she never discussed. A broken engagement and the abrupt loss of her mother. Too much grief in too short a time. New York was meant to be a new beginning, but some pain follows you wherever you go. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. "Emily Harper?" A composed voice called from outside. "Yes," she answered quietly. The door opened, and a man in a white coat entered, clipboard in hand. He looked up, and Emily was surprised he was younger than she expected, maybe in his early 30s. He was tall and slim, with dark, neatly styled hair, a defined jaw, and eyes the color of storm clouds, deep gray and intense. He carried himself with quiet confidence, but his eyes were kind as they met hers. "I'm Dr. Andrew Carter. I'll be performing your examination today." Emily nodded a bit too quickly. "Hello." He smiled. "There's no need to be anxious. This is routine. I'll check your vital signs, review your medical history, and do a brief physical assessment." He asked a few initial questions, made notes, and then indicated that she should lie back, so he could measure her heart rate and blood pressure. "Have you ever fainted before?" he asked. "No, just very tired lately," she replied softly, "and sometimes dizzy." As he placed a stethoscope on her chest, Emily closed her eyes. The room felt warmer, almost too warm. Her breathing slowed. She heard his voice, distant. "Emily?" Her fingers twitched, and then everything went dark. "Emily? Emily, can you hear me?" The voice was closer, urgent. Strong hands supported her shoulders, steady and reassuring. "Emily, don't close your eyes. Stay with me." Her eyelids fluttered. The overhead light spun. She felt pressure behind her eyes, a strange blend of nausea and weightlessness. "Am I dreaming?" she whispered, her voice rough. "No," the voice replied, now gentle. "You fainted. You'll be all right. I've got you." Her vision cleared just enough to see a face above hers, Dr. Carter, his intense gray eyes now filled with concern. "Are you an angel?" she mumbled, blinking. "Do angels wear lab coats?" He let out a short, relieved laugh. "Only the best ones." She became aware of her body, again her head resting on his arm, his hand supporting her back. She caught the scent of clean cotton and a hint of citrus. She was literally in his arms. Panic surged through her. She tried to sit up, but he steadied her. "Easy. You're okay. You experience a vasovagal response, probably due to low blood sugar and fatigue. Have you had anything to eat today?" She blushed, feeling self-conscious. "Only coffee," she admitted. He shook his head, still supporting her. "That's not a proper meal." "I didn't expect to faint," she murmured. "Nobody ever does." His hand lingered reassuringly on her shoulder for a moment before he guided her back onto the exam table. He moved quickly and confidently, checking her vitals, handing her a glass of water, and placing a cool pack on the back of her neck. She sipped the water slowly, her cheeks still warm with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "That must have been quite a scene." He smiled, settling onto a stool beside her. It's not the first time someone's fainted in my office, but it is the first time I've been called an angel. Emily groaned softly. I was probably out of it, but I have to admit, it was a little flattering. A quiet moment passed between them. He leaned in slightly. Do you live by yourself? She nodded. I just moved here. I don't really know anyone yet. He regarded her with gentle concern, not prying but attentive. You're not alone right now, okay? The way he said it made her chest ache a little. She looked away. Thank you for catching me. He stood, looping his stethoscope around his neck, and somehow she believed his words. Emily sat up carefully, the paper on the table crinkling as she steadied herself. Her head still felt light, but the worst was over. She held the cup of water tightly, grateful for its coolness and for the calm presence across from her. Dr. Andrew Carter hadn't left her side. He hadn't handed her off to a nurse or excused himself for another patient. Instead, he stayed, legs crossed, posture relaxed but attentive, as if she were his only patient. That, more than the fainting, unsettled her. You really don't have to stay, Emily said quietly, her voice uncertain. I'm not in a hurry, he replied softly. And you're not quite ready to get up yet, are you? She shook her head, still embarrassed. Is this kind of fainting normal? Yes, especially when you skip meals and rely on caffeine and stress. He tilted his head. Living in New York does that to people, he said lightly, though his eyes remained focused and kind. It wasn't flirtatious, nor was it detached. It was something else. It was genuine care, delivered with precision of someone who notices everything but passes no judgment. Still, she said, I'm sure you have plenty of other patients who aren't fainting in your arms. He smiled. Today I'm only concerned about the one who did. Her breath caught for a moment before she looked down at her cup. A soft knock sounded at the door. A nurse in scrubs peeked in, holding a clipboard. Dr. Carter, you're 2 o'clock. Should I reschedule? He glanced at the clock, then back at Emily. I'll be there in 15 minutes, he said, and the nurse blinked in surprise before nodding and leaving. Emily raised an eyebrow. I didn't mean to mess up your schedule. You didn't, he assured her. Sometimes, the people who seem in need help the least are the ones who need it most. His words were gentle but carried weight. She didn't reply, just stared at her cup. You just moved here? He asked. She nodded. A few months ago. New job, new life, still figuring things out. He smiled knowingly. Let me guess. You're pushing yourself too hard, avoiding asking for help, pretending everything's fine. She looked up, surprised. Are you always this receptive? He chuckled. Occupational hazard. And I've been there myself. She tilted her head. You? I can't imagine you overwhelmed by anything. Oh, I've had my share of tough times, he said quietly. More than I'd like to admit. The way he said it, softly and without bravado, made her wonder about the life behind his calm exterior and crisp lab coat. Almost as if he sensed her curiosity, he walked to the sink and washed his hands. You're stable now, but I'd like you to rest for another 15 minutes before you get up. I'll have someone bring you juice and a protein bar. Low blood sugar is serious. Thank you, she said, her voice smaller now, for everything. He turned, drying his hands. It's my job. No, she said quietly. It's more than that. Their eyes met for a moment. Then, as if the moment had grown too intimate, he looked away and smiled gently. Well, don't tell anyone. I've got a reputation for being emotionally unavailable. That made her laugh, surprised at how easy it felt. After he left, Emily reclined on the exam table, gazing at the ceiling. Her heart was still racing, but now for different reasons. Outside, the nurse who had interrupted earlier caught Dr. Carter in the hallway. She's all right? The nurse asked. He nodded. Just fainted. Exhaustion. Low blood sugar. The nurse grinned teasingly. You skipped 2 meetings for her? He shrugged. She needed a doctor. You haven't stayed through a whole patient consult like that in months. Dr. Carter paused, glancing back at the exam room. I understand, he replied quietly. That's exactly what makes this situation unique. So let me get this straight, Jess said, leaning against the kitchen counter, arms folded and one eyebrow arched. You actually literally fainted into the arms of a handsome doctor? Emily rolled her eyes as she stirred her tea, avoiding Jess's gaze. Don't make it sound like some romantic comedy. It was just a medical thing. Completely professional. Jess grinned. He stayed with you, even missed his next appointment. And he's attractive. Doesn't sound all that clinical to me. Emily shook her head, but a reluctant smile threatened her lips. It was nothing. Just a doctor doing his job. Sure. And the fact that you're still blushing 2 days later has nothing to do with it. I'm not blushing. You're bright red. Emily sighed and leaned back against the counter, cradling her tea. Look, I'm not searching for anything. Jess's tone softened. I know. I'm just saying, maybe don't close yourself off before you even see what's possible. Emily didn't answer. Her gaze drifted to the window, watching the snow swirl softly outside. The silence grew heavier until Jess spoke again, her voice gentle. You haven't talked about him. Not since Ohio. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, then took a long sip of tea. I don't want to revisit that part of my life. But in the quiet apartment, memories surfaced unbidden. 2 years ago, she'd stood in a white dress, bouquet trembling, heart full of hope and anxiety. The night before, she'd received an anonymous email photos of her fiancé with another woman. Dates, messages, proof she couldn't ignore. She hadn't told anyone. The next morning, veil in hand, makeup done, she walked away from the altar before the ceremony began. That same month, her mother died in a car accident on her way to see Emily. They never got to say goodbye. After that, something inside Emily closed off. Love became something unpredictable, even cruel. She moved away. She rebuilt her life, but never let anyone get close again. She blinked, returning to the present, finding Jess watching her with understanding. I'm fine, Emily said quietly. I have my job. I have a place to live. I don't need anything else. Jess didn't argue. She just gave Emily a quick hug and whispered, just don't forget how to feel, okay? Across town, Andrew Carter stood alone in his office. The lights were low. He stared at a framed photo on his desk of his mother, laughing in her garden. A scarf around her head, hands covered in soil and happiness. She died 10 years ago, and he remembered it as if it were yesterday. A routine outpatient procedure had gone wrong due to an allergic reaction. A simple oversight, a missed question on her chart. He'd been a college student then, leaning toward finance more out of obligation than passion. Her death changed everything. He left the Carter business legacy behind and chose medicine. Not to save the world, but to make a difference one patient at a time. After medical school at Harvard and years building his career, he was drawn back into the family's world, now running one of the city's top private hospitals. But he still saw patients he needed that connection, the clarity of helping one person at a time. There was another photo, hidden in his drawer, a red-haired woman with green eyes, his ex-fiancée. She'd left after he refused to take over Carter Holdings full-time. She didn't want to wait while he worked as a doctor. But Andrew had overheard her real complaint. She wanted his name to mean more in the financial world. He ended things the next day. Since then, he focused on work, fixing systems instead of hearts. Until Emily. There was something about her. Not just the way she had fainted into his arms, though that memory lingered. It was how she carried herself afterward, guarded but kind, hurting but hiding it, like someone who had learned to stand tall, because life had never let her rest. He recognized it because he'd lived it. For the first time in years, Andrew felt something shift inside him, something he didn't dare name. Emily, on the other hand, didn't expect to see him again. Nearly 3 weeks had passed since the fainting episode, and although she'd replayed that morning in her mind, his steady hands, calm voice, the gentle way he joked about angels, she told herself it was a one-time encounter. Doctors didn't remember patients like her, but when she returned to Parkside Medical for her follow-up, she entered the waiting area and saw him there, Dr. Andrew Carter, leaning against a reception desk, clipboard in hand, dressed in navy scrubs and wearing that same calm confidence that made her heart race. Before she could gather her thoughts, he noticed her and his face brightened just a little. Emily Harper. She paused, surprised. You remember my name? He stepped closer, his smile relaxed and genuine. It's not every day someone calls me an angel and faints into my arms. Emily's cheeks turned pink. Right. How have you been? Better. Eating properly, mostly. Sleeping a bit more. Still get dizzy sometimes. Only when attractive doctors show up out of nowhere. Andrew lifted an eyebrow, clearly entertained. Glad to see your sense of humor is intact. Before embarrassment could take over, a nurse called Emily's name. Andrew glanced at his clipboard and then back at her. Looks like I'm handling your follow-up, he said with a playful wink. Inside the exam room, the atmosphere felt changed, more familiar, almost comforting. Andrew asked questions, took notes, checked her vitals, and kept the conversation light, which helped her relax. As the appointment was ending, Emily suddenly winced and pressed a hand to her side. Is everything all right? He asked, instantly attentive. It's probably nothing. Just a stomach cramp. Maybe something I ate. He didn't look convinced. How bad is it? It's manageable. I don't want to make a fuss. Pain isn't dramatic, he said, already standing. Let's do a few tests to be sure. Don't you have other patients or meetings? I do, he replied, holding the door open for her. But they can wait. She followed him, feeling a strange warmth of being made a priority, something she wasn't used to. They walked together through the quiet corridors, unhurried. Between check-ins with nurses and technicians, they really talked. Emily shared stories about her job, her efforts to settle into the city, and her anxiety about the subway. Though she admitted the bagels made it worthwhile, Andrew recounted his first day of medical school, getting lost and ending up in the wrong classroom. They laughed together, and somewhere between the blood tests and the ultrasound, something shifted. Andrew looked at her not just with professional concern, but as if he truly saw her, not as a patient, but as a person. She noticed in the way his eyes lingered when she smiled, in the gentle tone he used when she spoke of her mother, and in the comfortable silences he allowed. When they sat together in a small consultation room, waiting for results, the quiet between them felt intimate, not awkward. Thank you, she said unexpectedly. For what? For making time. For treating me like I matter. Andrew's expression grew serious. He leaned forward, his voice soft. You do matter, Emily, more than you realize. For the first time in years, Emily felt truly seen, not for her past or her pain, but for who she was and who she could become. When they stepped out into the cool evening, Emily zipped her coat and glanced at Andrew. You're all clear, he told her as he held the door. All your tests are normal. Just a mild inflammation, probably stress. Nothing serious. She let out a breath. That's good. I was half convinced I had some rare, unnamed disease. He grinned. If you did, I'd name it after you. Emily couldn't help but laugh. Great. I always wanted my own syndrome. They walked in silence for a few moments until Andrew stopped in front of a cafe across from the hospital. Would you like to get a coffee? He asked casually. No lab coats, just coffee. Emily hesitated. The offer was simple, not intimidating. But something inside her hesitated, a familiar voice reminding her she didn't do this anymore. Thank you, but I should go home, she said quickly. Andrew didn't press. He just nodded, patient and calm. No problem. Maybe another time. She smiled awkwardly and left. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay awake, replaying his words in her mind. No pressure, just coffee. Yet it felt like more, not romantic. Not yet, but like a door she hadn't dared to approach in a long time. By morning, she found herself texting before she could second-guess it. About that coffee. Is the offer still open? The reply came almost immediately. Andrew, I thought you'd never ask. They met at a quiet cafe the next evening. No hospital lights. No gowns, just her in a navy sweater and jeans, him in a dark coat and scarf, both carrying a gentle nervousness. What began as small talk soon became something deeper, stories of childhood, family, her first job, his awkward teenage years. They discovered an easy rhythm in their shared silences and unexpected laughter. Emily opened up about her move to New York, explaining how she needed distance from the ruins of her old life. For a long time, she confessed, she felt like a ghost drifting through her own existence. Andrew listened not the way most people do, nodding and waiting for their turn to speak, but with genuine focus. His gaze never left her, his attention unwavering. Then he shared his own story. "My mother passed away when I was 20, he said softly, hands wrapped around his coffee mug. It was supposed to be a simple procedure, nothing major, but the hospital missed an allergy in her records. They overlooked it." Emily felt her chest tighten. "I was studying finance back then, planning to join the family business. But after she died, I dropped everything and never looked back." "Is that why you became a doctor?" she asked. He nodded. "I couldn't help her, but I thought maybe I could prevent someone else from going through the same thing." Emily stared at her hands. "That's admirable." He shook his head. "It's mostly grief, but it changed me." They sat quietly for a while, the gentle hum of the cafe wrapping them in a cocoon, safe from the cold outside. Emily finally spoke. "Sometimes I feel like I lost my value when everything fell apart, my engagement, my mom. Like I'm just a shadow of who I used to be. Not enough of anything anymore." Andrew was silent for a long moment. Then in a gentle voice, he said, "If someone ever made you feel like you weren't enough, that's not about you. That's on them." His words broke something open inside her. Tears pricked Emily's eyes, sudden and burning. She looked away, blinking quickly. "Sorry," she whispered, embarrassed. "Don't be," Andrew replied. "You're allowed to feel." She nodded, wiping her cheek. "I'm not used to this. People actually listening, saying what I need to hear. I'm not always good with words," he admitted quietly, "but I mean what I say." From that evening on, something unspoken began to grow between them. They started texting every night. At first, it was just quick notes and side jokes, daily updates. Then the messages deepened. Book suggestions, memories, fears they hadn't shared with anyone else. Emily found herself waiting for his name to appear on her phone. Andrew started checking his messages before even making coffee. Their connection wasn't a whirlwind. It was gradual, steady like warmth slowly filling a room that had been cold for too long. And for the first time in years, Emily wondered if healing didn't always mean forgetting. Maybe it meant starting over. It happened by chance. Emily stopped by Parkside to drop off some insurance paperwork, nothing important. She hadn't planned to see Andrew and wasn't sure she wanted to. Things between them had become easy, maybe too easy. The more they talked, the more she looked forward to his messages, the more she started to believe in something she hadn't dared to for a long time. Hope. She was walking past the administrative offices when she heard his voice. She didn't mean to listen, it just happened. "She's wonderful, Andrew," a woman said. "Her father's on the board at Dash." "I'm sure she is," Andrew interrupted, sounding weary. "But I'm not looking for anything serious right now." Emily froze. The words, the tone, they knocked the breath out of her. She didn't wait to hear any more that night. She didn't respond to his usual message. "Andrew, long day? Missing our late-night chats? Are you okay?" She stared at the screen for a long time before turning her phone off. Days went by 2, then 3, then 4. The silence between them grew until it seemed to fill every inch of her apartment. Jess noticed, "You haven't brought up your doctor in a while." Emily shrugged, trying to sound indifferent. "Guess he's busy." But the ache in her chest told a different story. He hadn't done anything wrong, not really. He hadn't made any promises. There were no confessions, no definitions. Still, the way he looked at her, the way he listened, the way he made her feel seen, she'd let herself believe it meant something more. Maybe it was just kindness. Maybe she'd imagined the rest. Andrew noticed a change immediately. She stopped replying, missed her follow-up, and didn't reach out. He felt a knot tighten in his chest. After waiting another day, he called the front desk. Did Emily Harper reschedule her appointment? "No, Dr. Carter," the receptionist replied. "She just didn't show." He ended the call and sat in silence, tapping his pen on the desk. She wouldn't just disappear, would she? But he'd seen it before. People vanished when they were scared, when things got too real. Still, the emptiness lingered. It wasn't just the missed messages. It was the absence of her. That weekend, rain fell steadily. Emily took the long way home with her groceries. letting the cold drops sting her cheeks. She hadn't cried in a long time. She hadn't allowed herself to. But now, beneath the gray sky, her hoodie soaked through, her chest too full, she stopped on the sidewalk and broke down. Her tears mixed with the rain. Impossible to separate, impossible to stop. The world blurred around her as she trembled in the storm, realizing she'd let herself hope again. Now she was grieving something she'd never even dared to claim. At Emily's office, the receptionist looked up in surprise as Andrew Carter walked in impeccably dressed, tall, composed, carrying an intensity that made people step aside without knowing why. But his eyes were searching, anxious beneath the calm. "I'm here to see Emily Harper," he said. "She's in a meeting right now," the receptionist replied. "I'll wait." He sat on a leather bench by the window, hands clasped, staring out at the busy street, but seeing none of it. He'd left 5 messages, 2 emails, 1 voicemail, regretted the voicemail the instant he sent it, but he hadn't stopped thinking about her. Not once. Not during the silence. Not through the ache of missing someone who'd never really been his. When Emily finally entered the lobby, she slowed as soon as she saw him. For a moment, she looked ready to turn around, but she didn't. She approached, cautious but composed. "Andrew," she said, her voice even. He stood. "Hi." They regarded each other for a long moment. "I know you don't owe me anything," he began quietly, "and I promise I won't keep you long. But I needed to say something face to face." She didn't speak, but she didn't walk away either. "That day the conversation you overheard," he said. "I was being pushed into a blind date. Some merger my aunt set up with another family. I told her I wasn't looking for anything serious, because I'm not. Not with someone I don't know. Not with someone picked for me." His voice was steady, but his eyes pleaded. "But I wasn't talking about you, Emily. You're not just a placeholder or a passing thing." Her brow creased. "Then why say it that way?" "Because I've spent most of my life being told who I should be with, and I didn't want anyone to think I'd let them decide that for me." He exhaled, the weight of weeks pressing on him. "I should have been clearer. I should have told you sooner. I didn't realize I needed to." His voice softened. "But I see now that I hurt you, and I'm sorry." Emily looked down, arms wrapped around herself, her expression unreadable, but her eyes softer than before. She whispered, "It wasn't just the words, Andrew. It's what I thought they meant." He nodded slowly. "I know, and I hate that I made you feel that way." A long silence followed. The receptionist pretended to be absorbed in her work. Andrew took a breath and added quietly, "I don't know what this is between us, but it matters to me. You matter to me, and if there's even a small part of you that wants to keep going, I'll be here." Emily didn't answer. She just gave a slight nod and turned away, heading back down the hall without another word. Andrew left, not expecting anything. But that night, after hours of silence, his phone buzzed. "Emily, I'm ready to hear more, if you still want to tell it." They met at Central Park the next afternoon. No fancy dinner, no reservations, just a bench beneath winter trees, their breath visible in the cold. He brought coffee. She wore a pair of gloves she usually avoided, since they reminded her of her mother. Sitting side by side in silence, they watched a family of ducks glide across the partially frozen lake. After a while, Andrew spoke. "I miss this." "Me too," Emily replied quietly. They began to talk about the things they'd left unspoken, about fear, about timing, about how caring for someone could be quiet and gentle, with no need for labels yet. Emily shared how she'd spent years trying to make herself smaller, hoping she wouldn't be abandoned again. Andrew admitted how often he doubted his own heart after being told it wasn't enough. Then, without any fanfare, he reached for her hand. Their fingers intertwined slowly, as if they were both relearning a language they hadn't spoken in years. Andrew turned to her, his words soft. "I don't need you to be perfect, Emily. I just need you here, really here." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't look away. She squeezed his hand and whispered, "I'm here." That afternoon, they didn't need promises. They didn't need to plan the future. They just sat together. Two people who had been hurt, but were brave enough to try again. A year later, the clinic's lobby was filled with laughter, gentle conversations, and the hum of gratitude. Emily stood by the reception desk, clipboard in hand, smiling as a young mother hugged a volunteer nurse. The day had gone better than she'd imagined. Over 100 patients had been seen, dozens of children vaccinated, and seniors who hadn't had a checkup in years were finally cared for. It was the first community health day hosted by Parkside Medical, led by Dr. Andrew Carter and Emily herself. She'd helped organize everything, and for the first time in years, she didn't just feel useful, she felt whole. Across the room, Andrew caught her eye and winked, a gesture that still made her heart flutter. He wore his usual navy scrubs, sleeves pushed up, stethoscope around his neck, and his eyes were tired but happy from a day of meaningful work. When the last patient left, he walked over, brushing imaginary dust from her shoulder. "You made it through?" he teased. "Barely. My legs are going on strike tomorrow." He grinned and leaned in so only she could hear. "I have a cure for that." "Oh," she said, smiling. "Is it doctor approved?" "Absolutely not." He gently took her hand. "Come with me." They walked in silence to the now quiet clinic, past rooms that had once felt sterile but now held memories, laughter, and moments of connection. He stopped in front of a familiar door. "Exam room 3. "Do you remember this room?" he asked. She smiled. "The place where I accused you of being an angel and then fainted in your arms?" "Vaguely." He laughed and opened the door. The lights were soft. On the counter sat a bouquet of white peonies, her favorite, and on the exam table, where she'd once lain unconscious, was a small black velvet box. Emily froze. Andrew turned to her, his eyes steady and voice gentle. "The first time I saw you here, I didn't even know your name. I didn't know anything about you. But I remember thinking, if I ever had the chance to keep you safe, to keep you close, I wouldn't let it slip away." He reached for the box and opened it, revealing a delicate gold ring, simple, elegant, timeless, just like her. "I don't need perfect," he said softly. "I just need real. I need you. Emily, will you marry me?" Her breath hitched, eyes shining with tears. She laughed through her emotion, nodding, "Yes, of course, yes." They didn't kiss immediately. Instead, they stood together, foreheads touching, letting the quiet say everything words couldn't. The wedding was intimate, just family, close friends, and a few volunteers who had become like family. It took place in the garden behind the clinic, a once-forgotten patch of land now transformed with flowers, benches, and ivy-covered trellises. It was the same garden Emily had helped bring back to life, spending weekends planting hope with every seed. Jess was by her side as maid of honor. Andrew's young cousin Noah carried the rings. Even the receptionist, who had once pretended not to notice their tension in the halls, sat in the back row, dabbing at her eyes. When it was time for vows, Emily took Andrew's hands and looked up into the eyes that had never wavered from her since the very beginning. "I once fainted because I was exhausted," she said, voice trembling, "and I woke up in the arms of a man who taught my heart how to breathe again." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Their kiss was gentle and certain, a promise they both had fought to believe in once more. As the sun set over the city, casting a golden glow on the clinic walls, Emily and Andrew stood beneath an archway of white blossoms. They were no longer doctor and patient, no longer two broken people, just two souls who had found their home in each other. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes it appears in quiet moments, in a racing heart, in a doctor's steady hands, in a second chance you never expected. Emily and Andrew's story is a reminder that healing begins when we allow ourselves to hope again, and that even the most wounded hearts can find their way back to love. If this story touched you, warmed your heart, or brought a tear to your eye, please share, and subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories. Here, we share tales that do more than entertain. They heal, they inspire, they remind you that you're never truly alone. Until next time, keep believing, keep feeling, and never stop choosing kindness.